So, hey everybody, and welcome to the next episode of In Conversation With. So, if you're joining us on the Friday night on the Azure Live twitch.tv, then thanks so much for tuning in. Please do take part in the chat below, and don't forget to give the channel a follow so you can get notified, obviously, when the channel goes live again. Equally, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe. Really is appreciated if you could do that. Okay, so my next guest today, he's worked in a number of roles across the globe, from Singapore to Melbourne. He's located now back in his hometown of Glasgow in Scotland with his family, where it's all about the DevOps. He works as a senior solutions architect for Octopus Deploy. So on that note, my next guest on In Conversation With is DevOpsDerek, aka Mr. Derek Campbell. How you doing, Derek? Nice to see you.
Hey, John. No, I'm good, buddy. I'm good. What about yourself?
Yeah, all good. I mean, thanks so much for joining me again tonight. You know, obviously, I appreciate under the circumstances, as I alluded to there in the intro. Huge congratulations, matey. You've just become a dad for the first time. How's that going for you?
Thank you very much. It's all of the emotions. It's my son was born early January, so I'm actually just back to work. I took 2 months off, so I was just back to work actually on the 1st of March. So I know this normally goes out a bit later in the week, but this is the beginning of my 3rd week back at Octopus. So it's been awesome though getting back.
Yeah.
I kind of being a new father. I'm a bit older than most. I'm not a lot. I'm not far off 40. So what I would say is it's amazing. It's great. I love it. But all of the emotions, guilt, happiness, frustration, and everything in between. But there's so much love there. But he's amazing. He completely changed our lives. But it's good.
Yeah.
It is good to be back to work, though.
I can imagine. I was going to say, yeah. I mean, obviously, you couldn't have timed it better for your other half. Now she had her first Mother's Day, obviously, over the weekend. So I bet that was a nice little moment to cherish for you guys as a new family. So brilliant.
It was lovely. It was lovely. I won't lie, I did spoil her. There was an early morning up and breakfast and dinner and roasts and cards and T-shirts and jumpers. And I think I went a little bit overboard. But it depends on what my wife would say about that, I guess.
No, absolutely not. I mean, you've got to, at the end of the day, haven't you? It's a magical moment in your life. And I mean, as you've alluded to there, Derek, obviously you've been back at work now for a few weeks. I mean, to kick things off, I mean, I don't know, for those of you that are watching this and obviously you don't know who Derek is, Derek, I don't know if you can give yourself a little bit of an introduction from your tech background, where you've been working and what you're up to now. That'd be cool.
Sure. I actually started... it's probably a little bit further than most go back, but I got my first 486 when I was 15. And from then, I've been pretty much hooked. I've always been more of a hardware sort of guy. Didn't go straight into it because obviously operations. I am definitely alluding to my age here, because obviously when I got my first computer 23 years ago. It was always about a hobby. I went to university to do chemistry, physics, and maths, and then I realised, I was like, wait a minute, this is pretty boring stuff. I went and worked in pharmaceuticals for a bit.
Okay, yeah.
Wasn't for me. There was preclinical trials, like how to package drugs. It was a standing operating. There was actually a standing operating procedure on how to read other standing operating procedures. And that wasn't an environment for me. So I actually moved into IT 14, 15 years ago now. When I was about 23, 24, moved over into a help desk company. And then, like you were saying earlier on, I actually, after 2 years there, I moved into London, spent 7 years in London, and then went to Melbourne in Australia to be a director. And then at that point, but just before that, DevOps was becoming a thing.
Sure.
At that point, I started using, funnily enough, Team City and Octopus Deploy, and that's where I'm at now. Those were the tools that kind of got me in, that started that automation journey for me. It was starting at the application level, and then kind of everything from that. As I've kind of went through, I've done some work in Singapore as well, and then back in 2017, I was like, hey, man, Scotland's okay.
Yeah.
So I had started my own consultancy, doing freelance like contracts for 6 to 12 months at a time. It was great. And then Octopus came calling. I got on a call with Paul Stovall, the founder and owner of Octopus, and it was like I shut everything down and went running. And that was just over 2.5 years ago now.
Sure. Yeah.
It's been quite a journey. So obviously that was when I kind of started doing my talks and stuff like that. And basically for the last 2 years now, I've been using Azure since 2014. Fun story actually. I was at the launch in Australia with Scott Guthrie. So I'm sat there. I was the director of a digital agency at the time. And so there's like technical directors from like Accenture and PwC, and I'm just sat in the room like, there's Scott Guthrie, his red t-shirt. That was it.
Yeah.
I was hooked on Azure because when in the UK, I started out and it was our own data centers. We had 3 dotted around the country,
Sure.
and we'd do bits on AWS or Azure every so often. But when I moved to Australia, and then 2 or 3 months later, Azure started in Sydney and in Melbourne. It was like, let's just jump into this Azure thing. And then from there, that's it. So it's been the last 7 years now I've been using Azure.
Cool, yeah.
And then obviously I do quite a bit with Azure DevOps as well. So this is where the DevOpsDerek came from. Obviously started out in Ops. It's funny. I don't even like the term DevOps engineer, but here I am using DevOpsDerek. I'm a big fan of Dev and then like plus Ops.
Yeah, working in harmony sort of thing, rather than, okay, with you. That's it. I mean, well, obviously it sounds like you've had a mix of opportunities over the last, your working career essentially. And so, like you say, you found your way into this position now with Octopus Deploy. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to see a few of your talks to kind of go through Octopus Deploy as a tool set. I don't know if you want to give me a quick, sort of 2-5 minute overview of what Octopus Deploy is, what it's all about, and what you do for them at the minute. That'd be cool.
Yeah, certainly. I'm a senior solutions architect here. What I do is I work in the customer solutions team. Used to be advisory as well. Customers, there's been a few names as we went through, but same thing. Ultimately, what I do is help customers use Octopus Deploy. So, say for instance, obviously I know you're with BT. I know that I don't think BT use it, but I know that there's a large range of companies like ASOS, etc. So we've got roughly about 30,000 organizations. So I can be talking to someone who's a one-man band, and then I can actually be talking to, say, large organizations. I'm not entirely sure who I can and can't speak about.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So what it does is it started out as a deployment tool back in 2011, 2012. So it was, at the time, it was just .NET deployments, and that's what I did. It was Sitecore or Umbraco. So I've been using it. It's funny because obviously the benefit of working at Octopus, you can see old tickets. So I looked back and I'd actually sold it to about 6 or 7 different organizations because I'd done a lot of professional services.
Yeah.
But as it's kind of grown over time, it obviously does LAMP stacks. It does. We launched last year Runbooks. Runbooks is basically a way for you to run anything that's not a deployment. So you can do, say for instance, like I use it for ARM templates or Terraform, etc. And we actually, funny thing, Octopus has Octopus Server, but we also have Octopus Cloud. Funny story is, we use Octopus to deploy Octopus, because obviously, why wouldn't you?
Self-bootstrapping type thing, is it?
Yeah. So we've got Cloud. So that launched just before I joined in June 2018. It was still in early access. And then, so what I effectively do is take whatever the developers are doing and then create samples, talk to people, play about with it. And Runbooks is my favorite. It's my favorite bit. I come from operations. I kind of went through that help desk to sysadmin to system architect to senior system architect, and then I went as far as a director, and then I was like, yeah, man, I'm not too sure this management malarkey's quite hard. And I was
I'm with you.
So what I did is I kind of took a bit of a step back, and I'm like, I like the technology still too much. So yeah, like that, it kind of ties into what I used to do. I've done a lot of professional services, or like hosting or DevOps consultancy, and then obviously that's when I kind of moved and done my own thing. But yeah, basically, I've done a lot of stuff. The one thing I'm not as a developer, I write PowerShell, and mostly it's bad, but it tends to, it tends to work and get the
I got
job
a good
done.
phrase for that. You know enough to be dangerous. Yeah, that's the phrase I always tell people. Yeah, yeah.
It's I've been called worse, but like duct tape. I've been called. I know one of the guys on one of my team, Sean. Sean, if you're watching this, he called me a duct tape programmer.
Yeah.
Like that. I'm like, hey, that's the way I see it. That's obviously it depends on how you see things, but I see that as a positive.
But you glue things together, so you take bits from other places and make the thing work that you're trying to do for the customers that you're working with effectively.
Yeah, and I can copy and paste like a champion.
Absolutely. That is a skill to have of its own right, I think. The Google foo, the copy and paste, the end goal, it's there. So
it's so true. And the thing is, like, do you know what? I see it sometimes it trips people up if they don't have that sort of stuff. And I think that's one of my strengths, not to blow my own trumpet, is I can normally Google something. If I'm on the second page, I'm like, uh-oh. But like ultimately, I can take new technology and get it up and running pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that. I mean, especially in today's climate, where we're all undoubtedly, I guess you feel exactly the same way as I do. I'm from a very similar background to you, Derek. I think over the years, coming through that typical operations sort of stack, working your way through the help desk, the support functions, right the way through into professional service and consultancy. I don't think I've known a time as the last few years where, from a technical perspective, you kind of have had to up your game significantly. I mean, do you see it in a similar light, or have you been able to avoid that by some miracle?
I think it depends. Like, I've definitely embraced it, mostly because I think, to be honest, I actually got any DevOps or like automation because I'm lazy, right? And I also don't like redoing things. Like once I've done something, like for instance, the way I've always explained it is, hey, installing IIS the first 10 times is interesting. After that, not so much. SQL, hey, that's maybe 20 times, and then it loses its interest. And that's where I think I've thrived in some ways because I'm easily bored, or I don't like doing the same thing over and over. So I've been lucky because, and I think I still remember the exact moment. There was I done a lot of CMS systems, which is your content management system. That's
sure.
It's it's like basically you write, you use your content management system, which is Sitecore, which is .NET. You can actually do it, and obviously it'll build your website, but that takes a lot of time. I remember at the time there was something called the grid.io. I remember seeing this and I was like, uh-oh, I'm going to land up working at McDonald's if I don't improve my skill set, because this basically done everything automated, no development. I remember it didn't launch because I think it promised too much. The reality, too much. But like that, I still remember, I was like, if I don't start learning PowerShell, for instance, it's like I'm going to be out of a job. And it's still there. I don't think it's worked out exactly like that. It's just, instead of people being out of jobs, you've just got harder, or depends on how you see it, more interesting problems to resolve.
That's a great way to frame it, to be honest, because I mean, like you, I guess, COVID, the situation that we've been in for the last year, across the world, has kind of, I think, enabled more people to kind of turn their attention to things that maybe they haven't been able to up until now. And I think for me, just this whole coming and doing these videos, finding people, interesting people in similar roles, but doing something slightly different to talk to and kind of learn in that way as well, has been, for me personally, a bit of a godsend, because all of a sudden now you're not just faced with, this set of buzzwords and these things that you need to kind of just do a bit of Googling, find a bit of information out, and then try and find somewhere to apply that knowledge that you've just read. It's really been a really tricky kind of situation, I think, over the last few years for people to kind of stay on top of those skills. Like you say, you either look at it in some ways that it's a great way. You've either got a more complicated job, or you've made your job massively more interesting now because there are, I guess, so many different ways of looking at it. So, I mean, just sticking with that, and obviously with your personal life now, you're just back to work. You've got a new young family. You know, I think from my point of view, there are definitely pressures out there. You know, whether we sugarcoat them or not, there's definitely pressures with keeping up to date with your knowledge, the fast pace of change with things like the Azure platform and any other tech platform for that matter. What's your way of looking at that at the moment, Derek? You know, especially under the circumstances now with having a new family. How do you? What's your take on it? I guess.
To be honest, I'm mostly trying to stay awake. At the
I was
moment,
going to say I'm looking for the matchsticks. I'm just seeing if you've got the
it's
matchsticks to the side of you. Yeah.
it's funny. This year, it's mostly been about staying awake.
Yeah.
Last year was quite a big year for me personally. I got married as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but with COVID, what happened was I remember because obviously I love my wife. She probably won't see this, but I think the closest we ever came to an argument was last Easter. Right? It was like so. I think Easter was only like 2 or 3 weeks after COVID
Yeah.
kicked in, like
Yeah.
when we went any shutdown,
Mm.
right? And it was like I found and remember the two of us were ready for just shouting at each other. And that's not something that we do. We got on
Yeah.
really well. But I remember it came to the Sunday. We had the Friday and the Saturday off, obviously for those in the US. In the UK, we get a 4-day weekend for Easter. We get something called Good Friday. Of course, it's a Good Friday. I'm off work. And then obviously Easter Monday. So like that with the 4-day, we got to the Sunday and the two of us were like quite annoyed because at that point we generally are out and about at the weekend.
Yeah.
I've got two chocolate Labradors. The two of us, like obviously at that point, everything was still a bit up in the air. At that point, I then started looking at Azure certifications. Just to throw it was like, right, I've got time. So at that point, I think I did 7 exams last year. So
Wow. Okay.
I'd
Yeah.
done the AZ 900, the DP 900, the AI 900,
Mm-hmm.
the 104, the 30, was it
300 and 301 was it? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
301. I done the 103. I remember now. I done the old
Okay.
Azure one, but the new architect one.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Um, so like that, I done a bunch last year. So the three hardest
Mm.
was.
Yeah.
Do you know? Honestly, I would say the administrator was the hardest exam for me last year.
I thought
Uh,
exactly the same, to be honest. Yeah, I thought exactly the same when I did them. I think you look at those architecture exams and they are slightly higher level. You kind of don't necessarily need to know that. Yeah, obviously it helps that you know the deep dive knowledge, but I think yeah, you're right. I definitely found the admin one a little bit trickier than the expert level ones.
I honestly the administrator one really surprised me because I think it was for a couple of reasons. If I'm being honest, a it's you need to know it from so many different levels. The
Mm,
architect exam, obviously, there's two bits of it. One's focusing on the technologies, and the other one's like that 10,000 foot view,
yeah.
right? Well, is the administrator one I found you're you know there is a little bit of this. There's also that super granular level detail, you know, and
Mm,
then next minute they're talking about Azure PowerShell, and it's like, oh wait a minute. And also, this may not be for everybody, but I bought the Measure Up exams, and
hmm.
I spent about £300. I bought like all of the exams, and this is just from my experience. I would never buy another Measure Up exam ever again because
Right.
it really threw me because I went from hitting 90% of my exams and then suddenly I was getting like 65%.
Mm,
Measure Up's awesome in that if you've got 6 months to 12 months to learn something, then go, you know, it is a good platform. However, what I found was I wanted the exam guarantee pass, but what that meant was the exams were actually their one was actually much harder than the real one, and it really destroyed my
right.
confidence.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then, so what wound up happening was I kept kind of doing it and the content, and I was on Plural site. I've been on, I like Skylines Academy.
Yeah.
Microsoft Learn, by the way, is
Mm,
fantastic as well. Um, there's so I covered it from so many, and I was like, these questions are so hard. And then
mm,
I'll end up trying, say, WizLabs. And the next minute again, I was acing them again. I was like, right, I know this content. So I was like, just do it. Pass the exam. After that, I just then booked them. Like, I think I had 2 months, and then I'd done the Azure exams, the architect one on the Friday, and then one on the Saturday. Because the benefit is the content is same. It's just how you look at it. So I just went, hey, here's 2 months. I'm just going to spend, I roughly spend about 15 to 20 hours a week.
Okay.
And then from there, I just kind of smashed it out. And then it was like I was in that role, and that's when because I'd done the AZ 900. And then, because your problem is you don't actually know how much you know until you either know it or you don't. I know that sounds a little bit backwards, but sitting the exam, actually, I was like, oh, wait a minute, whizzed it. And I was like, awesome. And to be honest, the only reason I actually sat it is I was doing a talk on the Thursday evening for Richard Hooper or Pixel Robots. He's got an Azure meetup in Newcastle. And I was like, oh, I should probably reschedule that exam. It was the next morning, so I couldn't. So at that point, I was like, I should probably sit this exam. And then, I passed it, and it was great. And then from there, I was like, right, I've got the confidence. And then from there, I just kind of smashed out as much as I could, both to keep me busy, but also I do, like, for instance, when last March, I was at NDC DevOps, which was in Oslo. So I had a 2-day workshop on Azure DevOps, Azure, and Octopus. It went great. But at that point, it was like, so I'd done the 2-day workshop. I had a talk on the Friday. NDC come to us on the Thursday afternoon, like, hey guys, we are going fully remote as of tomorrow. Like, get a plane.
Right.
So I actually had to book another flight for the next morning, and then get home, flew back to Edinburgh. And then from there, I rushed home, came back, sat down. I had about half an hour, and then I closed out the event with the talk. They basically pushed my talk to the last thing.
Wow.
After that, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I should probably, but that was the big bit for me, because I'd done that workshop, and then off the back of that, I then kind of started. I was like, let's just get these exams done. So I spent a lot of time at night, the weekends and stuff like that, and then knocked them all out. Good thing is, I'll never have to resit the exams. All going well. Obviously, Microsoft have launched a new one, so you can renew it online, whereas before you had to redo it every 2 years, which I'm not sure I would have, because as much as I use Azure, it's not all I use. Yeah.
Well, have you had a chance yet to? Have you had to sit any of those? If you did them all last year, I presume you still got the 2-year sort of validity at the moment. Because I had the first one actually, and on that note, talking about the renewal process, and I think they fitted out the park. To be honest, it was I found it so much more relaxed. Like you say, I don't know about you, Derek, but you tend to get in the zone. At least I do. When you're going to sit exams, you do what you do. You pick 2, 3, 4, 7 is phenomenal, but I think you pick a bunch of exams and you kind of get into that frame of mind, don't you, where it's about learning, it's about the Microsoft tests themselves, the way that they ask the questions, you kind of become a little bit familiar with. And I think when you break away from a couple of months, because I've done very similar, where I've sit a bunch of exams, have a break for a year or so, then go back and sit a bunch of exams, and it does take a bit of getting used to. And I mean, when you mentioned that renewal process, it was like a breath of fresh air, 'cause it's, for those people, I guess, that have sat quite a lot of exams, that renewal process, like you say, if you've now got to go and do all that, let's face it, you're going to have to do a good chunk of prep for a new version of an exam, because I think that the delta, the difference between what the exam was when you sat it and then 2 years later, there's going to be a significant amount of changes. So I think the fact that Microsoft have gone to this renewal process has made life, I think, a lot nicer for people, because it's just going. I think I had about 26 questions, all multiple choice. It's open book. You can kind of have the web page open. I think, like you say, the bits that I know that, tick, tick, tick. And then you hit something, ooh, hang on a second, I haven't dealt with that for a while. So, right, get onto Microsoft Docs, did a bit of reading, and that in itself, you're learning, So it's kind of, I think it's the right way, One thing I was going to ask you, though, Derek, how did you find the whole sitting the exams from home experience? Because I've managed to do a few of those now, certainly over COVID. I think I did a few before COVID. How was that for you? Good pros, cons, good, bad?
Great. I had a great experience. The main thing, I think I passed them all first time, thankfully. I like yourself, I done the 2008 MCSA as well, so obviously a long time ago. And I remember going into I think it was Prometric then. And you went in and these tiny little monitors, and it was like, oh. So I kind of wanted to not do that. So when I done the AZ900, so I knew I'd passed that, if I'm being honest. At that, I just kind of done it as a test, to be honest, right? So just for people who haven't done it from home, big thing is don't use a laptop. The main reason I say that, I mean, ultimately, if that's all you have, then you have to use it where possible. I've got, follow me on Twitter. You'll probably see that, like, unlike I don't have as good a setup as Johnny, but I've got dual 34-inch ultra wides. Great idea, right? However, I use a laptop for work, so I've got a Dell XPS here. Problem is, you're not allowed a second screen, right? So I would, if I'm doing it from a laptop, I would have to just do it from the laptop. Obviously, the main thing is you need to have clean workstation. So what I've got a little Dell Alienware Alpha. So what I did was in a spare room, I sat it down and I put a 23-inch. I've got a different monitor that my wife uses for work from home. So what I did was I actually set that up in her office space. And then what it meant was I could have a bigger screen. That's the biggest thing I'd say is if you're sitting exams, you probably want bigger than a 13-inch. Like at the time, I think I was running my MacBook. 13-inch just isn't enough. But the experience from home was great. I really, what happened was obviously you do the initial bit on your phone. So obviously, take pictures of your driving license or a passport. Obviously, they see your picture. Big thing is don't speak, don't cover your mouth, etc. Don't speak at all. The biggest thing. And the one thing I'd say is I was lucky, my Wi-Fi dropped out for a second, and then it popped up, and then everything there was good. But all in all, the experience from home was great. To be honest, I actually preferred it because from memory, when I went in, it was like 15-inch, tiny, and everybody now has much bigger monitors, so it's frustrating. But yeah, what I'd say, make sure that no one can interrupt you. Anyone comes in the room, it's an instant fail. So make sure the doors are closed, make sure there's no paper. Like, for instance, I had printer paper under my monitor to boost it up. I was told to remove that, but other times it was fine as well. So yeah, make sure it's all clean. But honestly, the experience from home was great. And what I'd say is try and avoid using Wi-Fi if you can. Use Ethernet.
Yeah, if you can plug it in and get that stable connection. I think I was just chuckling to myself because I remember the first couple of exams I sat from home. It was probably about 6 months before COVID hit. And the other thing that they do with that, so it's like a managed desktop they put onto your computer essentially, and they block out access. But they've obviously got part of the application is scanning for the background programs that you've got running on your machine. So you kind of have to shut Skype down and all of those other clients and things like that. And I remember one exam that I sat, I'd forgotten to shut Skype down, and I think they've modified the program now because literally I got about 25 questions in. Boomf, down come the shutters. You've got an illegal application running. I was like that. Oh my God, is this going to go against me? Is this bad? So literally, I was on the phone to customer services. The first time that happened to me, literally, they had to can my test. They did say, yeah, sorry, it was a bit sensitive. We'll modify it. They gave me a refund, a voucher to book the test again, so it was all resolved. And then, of course, most people would learn from that, wouldn't they? No, I don't. So a couple of exams later, exactly the same thing. However, what I did notice is that it now doesn't shut your computer down completely. It says you've got an illegal application running. Can you shut it down, please? But it keeps your test running. So, and you mentioned about the no speaking. So I think it was the AZ400 when I sat that a few months back. I was literally, I do a similar thing to you, Derek, where you sit in a room, obviously I God forbid I try and do it from the studio I'm in at the moment. I've got enough screens to kind of keep some small business running. So I
Yeah.
dread to think having to unplug all of this lot. But I was sat there and literally, you know what it's like when you're reading the questions and you're kind of just mouthing the words, just you read it and then it doesn't quite make sense to you, read it again. And I was just subconsciously just reading the question out, and the moderator pops up. Can you stop speaking, please? He's like, oh, sorry. Okay, so you're right. I mean, there are. I think I've heard a few mixed bags. I mean, on the whole, I'm with you. I think it's such a far easier sort of experience. I think when I was sitting in before, like you say, the Prometric test, you go to a local test centre, it kind of took a day out of my working life, where I think the nearest centre to me was down in Cardiff. It's a good sort of 35, 40-minute journey, but of course you want to get there half an hour early to do that last sort of 10, 15-minute prep from the car. And then you're in there, of course, and then drive back. So, yeah, I think now, especially with the exams you kind of feel a little bit more comfortable with, you can kind of get on with them and just get going, can't you? And take your time as well.
And the thing is as well, like it's Aaron Rawls, I think one of the guys I follow, he likes doing his late at night. Like I'm the opposite. I prefer doing it at like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is you've got that. You don't get that example because obviously I don't think Prometric centres opened up till like 8. Because I was the same. I had to go. I always had to travel like 40. And this was in London. I worked in Hammersmith at the time, and I had to go to Ealing. It was like which is about 40 minutes on the overland. The tube.
Yeah.
And to be honest, and this sounds horrible, but the Prometric centres at the time were a bit smelly. It was not a positive experience.
Yeah.
That's the thing is your house might be smelly, and here that's cool, but at least it's your smelly, and that's what I liked about it is it meant I could go downstairs and have, like, hey, I can crack a beer open, right? And then boom, I'm done. And that's the thing, it is a positive experience. The biggest thing I would say, kick everyone out your house if you can. Make sure your dogs are locked away, because again, if your dogs kind of come in, it's an instant fail. And I actually remember asking about the no speaking thing. It's so that people who, like, for instance, you could have someone in the next room and you could be saying, oh, the question is this and this and this. And then they could go, and then obviously like that. So I thought at first, I was like, this is a bit strange. But then when you think about it, it makes sense. It's kind of like that. I always remember Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And obviously the guy who won it, and obviously the wife was in going, yeah.
I think you're right, though. I think, for those people, I think it's that the minority kind of set the scene for the majority again. The majority of people are honest. They go in there, they do the hard work to learn all the material. They're there just to sit the exam, nothing more, nothing less. But yeah, I guess these rules are there for a reason, because you can guarantee that there are probably pools of people, pockets of people that would absolutely abuse that, I guess. And I guess they probably already have abused it, hence the rules. And that's where they come from. But so I guess you've done, you've sat quite a lot of exams. Have you got any more on the radar for you now? Any more Microsoft exams? Are you going to take a break for a bit? What's your thoughts on that?
To be honest, I was hoping to get the 500, which is the securities technology, and the 400, which is the DevOps one.
Yeah.
I just didn't get to it, unfortunately. And right now, I just don't have the time. It is.
Yeah.
I'm getting on in the morning. I'm normally kind of, how we're doing it is I still want to see my son. So what I'm doing just now is Monday to Friday, I do the wake up, and then I look after him till roughly 8 o'clock. And then it's back in bed for a bit. Whilst my wife, because she does the overnight feed. So right now, unfortunately, like I actually I had my own show like yourself, DevOpsDerek Weekly. I also had to shut that down just for the time being. So I think all extracurricular stuff just now, I can, like, bits like that. I still want to do this.
Yeah.
And I do still want to do it, and I do want to do more exams, but right now I just don't have the time.
Well, that's completely understand, and I think that's the message I guess we probably should be getting to here is that, and I think where I was alluding to earlier, because certainly for me personally, COVID has opened up a massive amount of time, as I'm sure it has for everybody. I've got 3 kids. I was dad's taxi. I was out on the road pretty much, sort of 9 to 5 with my day job. All of a sudden, you're thrown into this world of lockdown, all kids' sports are stopped, schools closed. What do I do with my time? And it's, it's true. And I think for me, the way I look at it now is that we've got this artificial rise in, and I think somebody mentioned it on Twitter the other day, that there's just so much stuff going on at the moment. So many people doing this, sat in their house, have got the time to get a nice little bit of a setup on the go, do maybe a little bit of a podcast with somebody, which is all fantastic stuff. Your show that you mentioned there, I was an avid watcher of your show. I think that was when we originally got in contact with each other a few months back. But there is a lot of it, and I guess it's, on some respects it's overwhelming. On other respects it's great to see, dependent on where you sit. But I guess for me, when you boil it all down, the message is, as much as it might be overwhelming, obviously there are key things going on in everybody's life that the priority order needs to take precedent. So new family, with your family, other hobbies or interests, absolutely. The tech, the exams, they'll always be there. The opportunities to do these kind of recordings and speak with brilliant people like yourself, Derek, that's going to be there. So I think it's just about, if you're watching this video, and I'm guessing, Derek, you probably felt the same way as I have at times, where it's like, right, which way do we turn now? And I guess it's just calm down, chill out a little bit. There's no rush that things have got to be done by next week or the week after or even next year. It's about do you feel that way, Derek? Any words of wisdom around that?
To be honest, I think I'll kick stuff off again, but it might be a couple of years. I think that's the thing. I think the main thing is find what works for you. Last year I had a lot of time, and what that meant was I could, because that's the thing is the certification. It's not for everybody. Like, I've had conversation with people and they're like, I just don't believe in getting certified, and that's cool. That you get people who just, that's not for them. For me, it was last year, A, because of COVID, but B, also, it did give me something to do, and it meant that my wife wasn't, like, Derek. And then obviously we weren't arguing, so it was like, so that's the thing. It's really just about finding, basically, she's like, I think she got to a point, she's like, right, go and just play with your computer. And I'm like, right, okay. But what it did mean was last year, though, was I got, like, what's happened now is I bought a bunch of new technology, because it's like, right, but the only thing is I bought that instead of doing exams, but I still don't have time to do it. So a shout out to Liam, Pete, etc. I've been playing with some VR stuff. And then, like, for instance, obviously when you get the VR, suddenly, hey, wait a minute, Steam VR, and then next minute you're buying Squadrons, and then you're spending £200 on Joy. Yeah, so this is what I do now. Then, look at you, though. I dread to think how much money you've spent in your office in the last 12 months.
Just don't ask.
Yeah.
I think I've just bought some new lights. I mean, I'm tinkering with them now, but the Elgato key lights, because I had the ring, and it's terrible. I mean, believe all the people that go on and say you don't need anything to start off doing this. Your mobile phone, the microphone, even inside a laptop, you can get on and do this sort of content. Absolutely you can, without a shadow of a doubt. The problem, I think, is, especially if you're a tech person, once you break into that world, all of a sudden you see the shiny things that cost money and go, ooh, that would be nice. And I'm a prime example of that. Amazon, I need shares. I think I've Jeff Bezos has got another couple of holidays out of me alone, I think is the reality at the moment. But
I'm the same. I'm definitely the same.
I think I joked the other day, because obviously, on about the VR headset with the Azure Live guys, I joined that session, was watching in a chat. I'd not laughed so much in all my life, because it was just funny. It was just the way that and it's brilliant. And it kind of hooks in with everything that went off from Ignite, with the whole the mesh announcement. And I know the guys, I know Liam did he just buy a Quest 2, I think, and you've got the Quest 2?
Yeah, we've all now got Quest 2s. So we're all kind of like Liam is at a different level, because he's got a PlayStation 5, he's got the new Xbox plus his gaming rig, and he's got games on all of them. So he's buying them for PC, he's buying them for PS5, he's buying them for Xbox, and he's buying it. So, like, that's a different level, but I'm still getting into it. I've only had my Quest about 10 days. It is, what I would say is, it's a lot of fun, particularly in a COVID world as well, is you can use it for so many cool things. Like I've used it for streaming Azure videos, like John Savo or whatever. So you can watch that. So you can just sit and watch it for YouTube, but then you can play games on it, like Beat Saber. So, I've got some curves, and like the Beat Saber, it definitely helps. It gets me up off my bum. I'm lucky, in that most of my equipment, streaming equipment anyway, has mostly been paid for by work, because of the nature of what I do. Because I actually head up the webinars at Octopus as well. So with that, you get the Rode podcaster, you get the lights. I am not normally this handsome in real life.
Oh, I don't know, Derek. Yeah,
It's we need to meet up in person, Johnny. Do you know? Actually, one thing I just want to say though is, do you know what I am missing?
Go on.
Events.
Yeah,
I miss going to
absolutely.
events. It's soon. I'm going to have to start buying socks and t-shirts again. If I don't start going, but I'm missing talking to people. This is great, and I think that's how I kicked off my own show as well last year. It was just, hey, Monday night, let's talk to someone, and most of the people, like I've met a few of them in person, but most everybody that I speak to, I've never met in person yet.
No, I'm with you. It's exactly the same for me, and I think I go on Twitter quite a lot, and there's that conversation about when are in-person events going to get back together. We all miss it. I mean, there's something to be said, of course, about the virtual stuff now, with user groups all being virtual, and the accessibility not just to that local, sort of circle of people around a specific area. The fact that I think virtual events are going to stay around for, and for a long time. I can't see them dying away after what we've gone through with COVID. But you're right. I mean, just getting back. There's nothing more exciting than walking around an event and taking a pen off every stand and then counting your pens up at the end of the event.
I am a shameless holder of all things sticker based. I love my stickers. Like I've got a box over there and it is like this deep in stickers. That's my guilt is stickers. To be honest, I actually love Octopus stickers. Those are my favourites. Obviously, I'm kind of biased there. But there's so many cool. Like the GitHub stickers come a close second. They are beautiful.
I think I've resorted now to reaching out to all the great folk over Twitter to say I need stickers. So I have had a few people send me some stickers as well. So I got them in a little box. I'm going to make a little chart and get them up on the wall at some point soon. But
I need to send you some Octopus ones in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got my Jonnychipz ones now as well, so we'll get those on the go.
I need some. I don't have my own sticker, but I need a Jonnychipz, and it'll go on my Dell.
This is the I don't know what to call it, because all of this stuff that I do, you've got to enjoy doing this kind of stuff. You've got to enjoy speaking to people, like you say, but equally the whole thing that I've gone through has been a learning curve. It's been something enjoyable to get involved with. Aside from the certification that you're going to have to do, maybe for your job or for your own interests. This whole new way of working, if you want to call it that. I mean, I guess like me, Derek, you've been used to working from home for a certain amount of time now, so it's not necessarily become that kind of culture shock that maybe it has for a lot of people.
It's for me. I've been working from home pretty much permanently for the last 4 years now. Before that, it was kind of 1 day a week from home. To be honest, I just can't see me ever going back into an office ongoing. Like Octopus, we have one office and it's in Brisbane. The commute would be a bit far, but we go over and obviously catch up every 6 months normally. We probably will go next year, which means we've not been in 2 years. We're lucky that Octopus was always built up from the very beginning as a remote first company. So when they did get in touch, it was one of the things I loved, because I had been doing it for my own thing for about 18 months at the time. And then I was at a custom, I was on an engagement, and I was having to travel into Edinburgh. So there was about 4.5, 5 months where I was traveling and I was commuting every day, and I miss my dogs.
Yeah.
You know, like that. It's like not only is it a time saver, but you know, you save money, but also my dogs are nearby. Like, so it doesn't matter where I am in the house. The dogs are obviously about. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Like, it's not for
Yeah.
everybody. My wife joined me last year, and she'll probably kill me for saying this, but so like yourself, I've redone my office.
Yeah.
I've got a nice new desk last year. Um, and before that, I still had desks, and my Nicola works for HMRC, right? Don't hold it against her. She's a good person. Um, and so what happened was, I love her to bits, Nicola. If you do see this, I'm sorry, but basically what happened was, obviously, so she joined me in my office.
Yeah.
It was like, cool. So obviously I've got all the equipment. You know, she's got a desk. I gave her the monitor. All she had to do was plug in her Surface. She'd the Surface Pro. So, you know, quite lucky. She works in operations as well. Um, oh, I couldn't work there. Nothing there. It's just they talk, like they have meetings about planning meetings, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I can't do this. So obviously this lasts for about a week, and then eventually, like, we had to limit. She likes to talk, and I love her, but she was distracting me, and it was like, right, I'm like, we're gonna have to. Your chatter's gonna have to stop. I'm focused, because you know it's like you're in the middle of something.
Yeah.
It takes you 20 minutes to get back into it. So I've kind of said, let's have what we called water cooler time. So water cooler time was 5 minutes every hour between 5 to and on the hour where we could talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, obviously, you know, she likes to have a talk and talk about colleagues and stuff and talk about that. So that was fine. And then I had a webinar, and it was like, right, so this was about 2 weeks into remote working. And I was like, you're going to have to go downstairs to the living room. We've got at the time with the kitchen bench in there. And it was like, yeah, cool. And then she never made it back. She never ever made it back into the office. I did set up something alternative in the other room. But just a little quick hint for you. Obviously, if you are doing remote working and your partner's there, you don't have to be in the same room. I love her, Nicola. I love you so much. Obviously, don't give me
I think you're getting ready to get another couple of bunches of flowers together now, Derek. Is where you're heading. You know that, don't you? But
it's funny though.
But no, at the end of the day, it's a valid point, because I think, you know, those amount of people that have used to be 9 to 5 office based now, you know, who have now been thrust into this working from home. You know, we've known about it for a while, you know, especially with the kids being home from school. And I think generally, which is great to see, generally businesses now are very accepting that, oh, sorry if the background noise, the kids are home. Absolutely. It's just become the new normal, I suppose. Sorry, you know, it was one of those phrases that gets bandied around a lot. But it's a valid point. You know, if you are in the house with kids, with partners, with pets and animals, there's a new way of working essentially now that we're kind of all having to get used to. And I suppose for me, you know, and like you say, you buy some new equipment, you get yourself set up. Before all of this that I'm in now, I'm in an office with lights flashing. I've got a neon sign on the wall. It's all a bit tongue-in-cheek. It's a bit of fun. It's just something to keep you preoccupied and not going stir crazy. However, the alternative that I had was literally, because my job comprised me being out in the car generally 80 to 90% of my working week, my working from home consisted either a tiny little desk at the end of the bed, literally, that would just about fit my laptop on, and a really uncomfortable chair, or worse, sat in front of the TV with loose women on, my laptop on the arm of the chair, and like you say, you know, especially because my other half, she doesn't work a 9 to 5, she works shifts, so sometimes she'll be home, and it's those distractions. As much as you love your family, of course you do, you need to carry on doing your job. So it's valid points, and I suppose people probably are going through this but not really recognising it, and how you get around it. And I think in my scenario, I've been fortunate that I've managed to get this room together. We got a nice little lounge out there. I did try and blag the lounge. Yeah, the other half wasn't having any of that. You know, I keep saying now, I said, I've got to expand. So I've expanded into the garage now with some more lights, done the garage up into a gym. I thought I've got to expand into the dining living area somewhere. But no, it's all good fun. You know, it's just about making your environment, I think, as comfortable and as accessible and as enjoyable that you possibly can. And I suppose that manifests itself in different ways for different people. And for me, it's about being a little bit lavish with the strip lighting, and being a bit silly with lighting, and building a Christ, I hadn't built a computer in like 10 years. I thought, I'm going to go on Amazon and scan, and I'm going to buy all the components, and I'm going to build my own computer for the first time in 10 years. It was just that, and I did it. So enjoy it, I suppose, is the point, isn't it? Enjoy what you're doing, and make it a nice, enjoyable space for you to work from.
It's about, I think that's spot on. It's about investing in yourself as well, because that's the thing as well. Is I bet you've sat on that sofa, right, and you're on your laptop, and then by the end of the day, you sit up, and your back is killing you because you've been hunched over your laptop, looking in and down on it. And obviously, I had a 13-inch, so I was constant. And then you wonder why we get back problems.
I'm suffering from it now. Absolutely, the first 6 months of lockdown, literally. I mean, some would argue it's my own fault. I'm a bit sedentary. I don't get up and do the exercise that we should all do. But yeah, you're right. Sat there on the sofa, you're twisted at a funny angle, and I've got problems with my back because of that now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
what I'd say is I have a Herman Miller Aeron chair. If you can get your company to buy it or chip in for one, it's made a massive difference. I've had one now about 18 months at home, and my back problems have all disappeared.
Oh, that's cool. So yeah, I think I saw a couple of pictures of that on your Twitter. You put that up the other day, didn't you? Yeah, I'll have to. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the office chair that I'm in now it's not one of those nice big fandangle expensive things, but it's got the lumbar support. It's quite a nice little chair. You can I can happily sit in it for a couple of hours, get up, do a little bit of a walking round and whatnot, and then come back to it. But yeah, it's just all of these funny things that I guess we're all finding out now, being locked down, isn't it? But I mean, let's bring it back to the tech for a second before we wrap up, Derek. I mean, couple of points that I was going to bring up with you now today, just to kind of, we've already talked about things like VR and where tech's go in the future of tech. What areas of tech for you, Derek, outside of the DevOps in your day job? What areas are kind of igniting that passion for you, and you think, ooh, at some point in the future, I'd like to have a little dabble in that area? Have you got any?
See, to be honest, security. It's something I'm pretty passionate about, and I always try and do something. I've actually, I've had a fairly varied career. I kind of done the help desk, sysadmin, the architect, manager, director, and then I came back to this. So I think for me, it is security. I think if someone said to me, you can't do operations like the way I've done it, and you can't do DevOps or that sort of approach, I think it would be security. I definitely looked at it as a career alternative, and I was very tempted by the 500 exam to do it. But yeah, I think security.
Microsoft they've just launched I think 3 or 4 beta exams, haven't they? The SC range. I think you've got the SC 900, the fundamentals now of security. I think it's the 2, 3, and 4. I know one of them covers Sentinel and that kind of SOC area, but I think looking at some of the comments from other people across sort of the socials, I think there's a bit of a mix with that AZ500, the security questions from there. Yeah. But they look really intriguing, actually. Like you say, it's a really interesting area. And in fact, a colleague of mine has really focused his attention now on the whole security piece, to try and, I guess, for me, over the years, we've all kind of become, sort of de facto security consultants, because security is kind of baked into the products and services that we're all having to talk about. So, I don't know if you found that, but, my data, I came from a traditional sort of unified comms background. So I was very much around OCS linked, Skype into Teams, and I did Exchange and messaging. It's always been Microsoft, but I came from that area, and as soon as it went to 365 and we started talking about Azure AD, it was like all of a sudden, security is at the forefront of the conversation. I mean, quite rightly so, but I think that the progression now, even if you just look at it with the Microsoft, sort of blue lenses on, and you look at where Microsoft are going with security, it seems to be the user identity is at the forefront of everything that we do, be it our back roles and permissions within Azure for access to resources, through to Intune and device management, and, obviously all the kind of controls that you can put in place for compliance and things like that within 365. Everything seems to have security. So I think the fact that they've split off these SC range of exams, tells me that, Microsoft are, actually looking for people to focus in that area. So I think that's a good call. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, see, to be honest, I think this is what I'm seeing across the board is you're starting out with quite broad exams, and then they are bringing in these kind of like more micro level exams. And that was the things like security. I think that's the thing though, Johnny, you're saying, obviously chatting about Active Directory and Azure Active Directory, before, when you've got cloud-based authentication and authorization, then the big thing there is your domain controller is now in the cloud. It's easily accessible in that you can, obviously you can connect to your tenant. Whereas before, your level of exposure was probably Exchange Online and maybe a VPN server. That's, when you look at the surface of attack, if you look at, say, 10, 12 years ago, you look at it now and your authentication providers are now readily accessible. So you have to obviously bring the security side in, because I remember I joined a company, I can't say which, but it was a long time ago. And I remember hacking their Active Directory. I ran some pen testing at it, and it hacked everybody's passwords. And I was just like, I went round, I was like, you change your password, what is it? And I told them their password, and they're like, how did you know that? And I was like, hacked Active Directory. It was just I remember it was just a point and click tool. Looked at the SAM database at the time, which is a hack by itself, right? Because obviously I was a domain admin. But at the same time, as I was like, this surface as attack is quite, because you would have had to have normally had either a Wi-Fi connection, with your Wi-Fi, you've maybe got MAC or filtering, etc. And then at that point, but the other one is you walk in and plug a network cable into any device, boom, that's you on, that is me, a white hat hacker. But it is cool. Yeah.
I was going to say on that note about security and hacking, I don't know if you've come across a guy called Kevin Mitnick.
Yes, yeah.
I saw him once at one of the Future Decoded events, probably about, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago now. He did one of the keynotes there. And before then, I'd seen him around, and I did actually have one of his books. Wow. I mean, if you look into Kevin Mitnick, I don't know if you've read any of his books, but really he was one of these notorious hackers, American hackers from, sort of the I want to say the 80s, maybe late 70s, 80s, where he was into all that phone phreaking. So that kind of the blue box technology where you put it over the end of a phone and put the dial tone in and get free collect calls, as they call them.
Whistle. It was a whistle, wasn't it?
That's right. But I think he was one of those prominent guys in America that some of the stories he told, I think there was one around how the FBI were after him, but he'd hacked the cell tower at the time. And he knew all the FBI agent mobile phone numbers. So he'd set up this little scripter course from the cell tower that was around his house. As soon as one of these numbers registered with that cell tower, he knew the FBI were close to his house. So he knew that they were going to be coming to kind of have a chat with him. So he tells his story once where he leaves them a box of donuts. It's a thing of movies. And I'm assuming all of this is true. I've got no reason to doubt him, but he left them a box of donuts saying, you've got to be quicker than that sort of thing in his little apartment because he'd, hacked the cell tower. But I think for Kevin, it's all about the social engineering as well, the social side of hacking. That whole thing around, the weakest part of the security is the end user or the person, that social manipulation. And if you're watching this and you get a chance to buy some of his books, they're just some brilliant stories there.
He done a film as well. I remember this back in, this would have been what, early 2000s maybe?
Yeah, quite possibly.
Film.
Yeah,
I remember. I can't remember what it was, but I remember it was when I was getting into Kevin Smith as well. It was like Takedown or something it was called, I think. But it was funny because I remember that one, and obviously it was the film version of it. Because obviously, this is back in the day when was it the joke? What was that called? I forget his shot. It was the Joker's cookbook as well. That's. Do you ever remember that as well?
I think I remember him being something. I don't know if he was part of it, but he was at associations with the hacking group Loft in the US. There was a notorious hacking group called Loft. And I remember one of the stories that he told in the book were around, obviously, some of the guys from this hacking group. I think one of them, I paraphrase the story, but one of them got asked for interview for quite a large security firm, as these notorious, well-established ethical hackers do. And, I think the directors of the firm were saying, well, look, we need to give him some tests, or give them some tests to kind of prove their worth, sort of thing. So they set them a few targets. And what this guy did, to cut a long story short, is that he was going there for an interview, but he had to prove his worth from a hacking point of view. He actually hacked into that particular company's systems, got all the voicemail, got all the email, and he noticed that a couple of the directors were talking about him in a not too pleasant way. There was a couple of answer phone messages. So I think he turned up anyway for the interview, gave them all the stuff that he'd hacked from the company, but kept the bits around, obviously what they'd been saying about him. They said, look, by the way, I don't want the job because I know exactly what you think of me. And it was quite a touche moment. And that's one of the, obviously there's a lot more to it in the book, but it's just really clever, and scary in some respects, what businesses are kind of potentially opening themselves. So of course, we've got the latest issue with the whole exchange server situation that's going on for Microsoft at the moment as well. And that's causing a few problems globally. But
SolarWinds, there's been so many. So many. It's kind of terrifying, to be honest. It is definitely terrifying, because that's the thing, is these things have been about for such a long time, but the problem is people are now readily doing it, and that's the thing. Like, one of the things at Octopus that we do, we actually have our software is now, obviously it's you can try and hack it, and we actually reward it. We use, I think it's Bugcrowd. I was part of that for a bit. And that's the thing. It's there's, the problem is now is security is part of everything, and it needs to be part of everything. And I think that's something that does need to improve as well going forward. But yeah, security is definitely where I think I would.
No, absolutely. I think it's, like you say, we're all talking about it now. Cloud security. We're no longer behind a series of firewalls and routers that essentially got their edge sort of protection layer. It's out there. So, it's a really good thing to be interested in. So, on that note, Derek, we've had a really good conversation so far. Are there any other final words of wisdom that you want to drop in before we wrap this one up?
Have your kids before you're 38. But no, I think, to be honest, the biggest tip I can generally give people is get stuck in, play about with it, and to be honest, there's really great stuff out there like Twitter. To be honest, I've had it for just come up for 3 years now. So many things, guys like Johnny, obviously we've got others in the team as well, Azure Live, there's so Gregor, Richard Tupper. If you are looking at that, there's so many resources. And yeah, get certified if you can, if that's something that's interesting. I'd honestly, that there is a sense of achievement. And the thing I like about the certification is it forces you to kind of study around the edges. What I find with technology is you know as much as you do until you don't. I know that sounds a little bit silly, but what I find is you don't always know, like for instance, VMs was something I knew inside out, like functions and stuff like that. Didn't know it so much. So, and then suddenly as well is you also become aware of new technologies like Azure Front Door. That was something I'd never used about. So like that, I am a big fan of certification. And also by the end of it, there is nothing, there are other things, but it's a great feeling when you get past. And that's the thing, is it's about validating your skills and learning the stuff that you don't realise that's there.
I couldn't agree more. It's like you say, you get stuck into a cert, and I think before you know it, it kind of opens up your eyes to those areas, as you put it, that you didn't realise you didn't know about, and then all of a sudden you're looking into other areas to get that cert, get that pass, and you're learning so many more things as well. But Derek, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. It's been a great chat. I say it to all the guests, but again, we could, I no doubt, carry on and make a 3-hour spectacular on this, I'm sure. But we'll bring it to a close there now. Parting notes, Derek. Best of luck now, obviously with the new family and the baby boy. I hope all of that goes swimmingly well for you now over the coming months and years. Obviously part of the Azure Live team, so when you're good and ready, I'm sure we'll be having a chat about setting some other clever, crazy things up. I know Liam's full of amazing ideas that I think I can't wait to start seeing some of those things come to fruition. But
Yeah, definitely.
but no, thanks so much, Derek. On that note, thank you for joining me today, and we will catch up very soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, Derek.